Hello everyone. So the subject of this video is going to be to talk about the situation we've had at our place of work with the auditors. So we're going to talk about who are the auditors and why take them seriously. This presentation is really going to be divided into 5 parts, actually probably 6 really when you look at it, but we're going to talk about what are the amendment auditors, what are the two different types of auditors we deal with, who are these people aside from the movement, and what movements and ideations are they linked with? And then we're going to finish up when what can the average person do who is harassed by these people at their place of work? Because there's actually a lot you can do. So it's necessary to establish the bona fides, of course. So who am I? Stephen Brannon. I am a veteran of the global war on terrorism. I trained for several months at Fort Bliss, Texas, at Base Camp McGregor. I was part of COIN OP, counterinsurgency operations, or what a lot of civilians just called the Surge, from 2007 to 2008. That was an interesting time to be in the Navy and have a security clearance. I'm a United States Navy intelligence veteran, mostly operational intelligence, which, to tell you the truth, a lot of times is going to be quite a bit more boring than it actually sounds. I have nearly a decade of experience in various security operations. I have a bachelor's degree in information assurance. It's basically information security counter hacker. A master's from Michigan State University awarded to me for the social sciences with a major in law enforcement intelligence and analysis. Who are the amendment auditors? Well, they're self-appointed people. Often they claim the authority of popular opinion or the authority of representing some marginalized group, but that's not really the case. They're constitutionalists. They believe in a very strict interpretation of the Constitution, but not really strict, kind of a weird one that conforms to their needs. They claim official capacity, and we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, but they will oftentimes show up, and this sounds like a joke, but it's true, with just a pin that says press or a sticker that says press on their clothes. Some will even go so far as to say they're representatives of the court, and when you ask them about the courts, they'll say something like People's Court or the Court of Public Opinion. Now, what are their motivations and their makeup? So their first motivation is going to be kind of obvious, and that's actually going to be money. They want to win lawsuits against the city, and sometimes they actually have if the city has mishandled the case. I think they're experts at just finding the right amount to sue a city for and the lawyer who can just get the settlement. I have seen stuff posted online about their awards they get. Some of them have a martyr's complex and they just want fame. They'll say they're exposing corruption, and they'll ask you why you don't want corruption to be exposed. Some argue that we're in a totalitarian police state, and the fact that they walk into buildings and start recording people and asking the names of women who work at the establishment, recording children. They'll say the police showing up proves a police state. They'll say things, of course, again, they'll use the word corruption constantly. It's almost a mental disorder. Their identity and ethnic makeup, we're going to also go into a bit more detail, but they tend to be white males with no college degree. Now, there's two types of amendment auditors. There's the Second Amendment auditors, and I think pretty much if you live here in the state of Michigan, you have seen these people. They're the ones who feel they always need to have a gun strapped on them. Sometimes they're very obvious and they'll go shopping for clothing with a full-on AR-15 strapped across their back. I think of these people as being very self-defeating. I love guns. I can take a lot of guns apart. I have experience with them. I own an AR-15 myself. I own a Sig Sauer pistol. But these morons walking around into buildings to demonstrate they can carry guns, especially when they do it after a time where there's been a mass shooting, there's no taste in that. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish, and I don't see how they think it helps anything. And that can be intimidating. I wrote intimidating, but not always threaten. They don't often actually make implied threats. In fact, their firearms are usually always holstered, pointing away from people, and they keep their finger off the trigger, which is actually a huge legal technicality that does count for something. The auditors I'm going to be speaking of today are going to be the First Amendment auditors. And they derive their power from how they interpret the word press. I would argue they misinterpret the First Amendment, and they think of, citizen press, which is not a real thing. There's no call for the citizen press from the Founding Fathers. And they say that if you oppose citizen press, again, that word corruption, these guys will say that 10 times in 1 minute. I actually do have the entire First Amendment right here below, if you are interested to it. I also have here a picture of James O'Keefe. He's one of the founding fathers of what's called Project Veritas, and that essentially is the inspiration for a lot of citizen journalism. They've done some interesting things, but they've also done some very shady things, like the whole Acorn exposure. But as you can see here, I'm going to read a little bit of it. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of press or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And you can interpret that to mean they're not going to abridge anybody from owning an actual press. But in here, there is nothing about a right to capture the likeness of somebody if it's not for informational purposes. Who are these people? As I said, they're white male. They target public sector businesses, city halls, libraries, tend to do target businesses with lots of minorities, lots of women. They are paranoid and tend to be narcissists. They borrow, they go to people's workplaces. They make it all about themselves. Many of these people will have racist and sexist motivations, although not all of them. And I'm going to get into possible affiliated movements later. I have here, Freedom News Now. That's a YouTube channel that many auditors are going to be into. I also have One America News, which we're going to talk about just a little bit more here. And that's a alt-right information channel. So, Jason Posobiec is the person who helped gin up a lot of the Pizzagate stuff. That's him there. He's the white guy in this. And he actually went to Comet Ping Pong and said he was debunking it, but really he was just recording it, and part of the conspiracy nuts that actually created the problem that got the place actually shot up. Somebody did enter Comet Ping Pong because of all the accusations about it, and did go on, like I said, to enter the building with the weapon, fire it off. Now, nobody was hurt, at least not physically hurt. Some of those people still have mental scars. So there is a price to pay for this paranoia. Movements that will tend to intersect with the auditors. You have the manosphere issues. And again, unfortunately, you'll notice this pattern that, yes, they do fit the description of mass shooters. You'll notice the manosphere. Divided into three parts. That's MGTOW, men going their own way. These are people who perceive that the justice system has been unfair to males. And of course, it's easy to get into the history of the justice system and cite some instances where they might be right. Also very easy to get in the justice system and point out where it's unfair to females. Pickup artists, I got to admit, these people, from the very little material I've observed from them, they're very misogynistic and rapey. Incels, the involuntarily celibate, these are misogynists. They're a problem. They view sex as being some sort of right. They don't necessarily believe in self-improvement. And on the internet, they meet in places like 4chan and 8chan. They used to meet on returnofkings.com. That site is no longer being added to, but it is still up and running. Started by Arush Valazadeh. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that last name, and Arush is actually just a nickname. And they're also part of the sovereign citizens, or could be part of the sovereign citizens. This is the real threat that you need to be actually careful of. The sovereign citizens do not recognize federal authority. They think that citizens sort of have unlimited rights. Any rules or regulations imposed by local, municipal, state, or federal government is simply tyranny. They'll have weird signs on their car in lieu of registration stickers saying not owned by the state, it doesn't have a right to inspect or anything like that. Some of them will actually send warrants to peace officers, and they'll send warrants to agents of the court. They'll actually send warrants to judges, and these are always to appear at some place that is not an official building for trial and be tried by the people's courts, as they call it. So far as I know, nobody has actually shown up to those, and they really have no authority, but they have killed people. The sovereign citizens are a legitimate threat, and I know there's a lot of idiots out there who will say something like, well, it seems that people concentrate on Islamic terrorism, and in my case, yes, because that's what my formal training by the federal government was in, you morons. Why don't you call out any other type of terrorism? This is now the second video I've made where I've called out the sovereign citizens as being one of the largest threats out there, both to the average citizen and, of course, to law enforcement officers. Because the problem is what about when they do get detained and asked to pay or asked to show registration? I have here actually the links. If you can't read those because they're small, please it's no problem. They will actually be in links in the description. I close this slide here with a really interesting quote that I can't remember where I got it from, and this is probably a paraphrase. The lone wolf has a virtual pack because people are going online, and because of the abundance of online information, they're siphoning off a lot of good information, only going to things that confirm their biases. This is a problem for so many reasons. What can you do? Well, the first thing you can do is get them on paper. Look, if you're at a business that provides a service, I don't care what service it is, you are there to serve people who are there for that service. Anybody else is loitering. Call the police. Call 911 immediately. Get a case number. At your actual individual place of work, file an incident report. Get a copy of the report. Consider filling out a personal protection order. Look, this will let them know that you are a heavy hitter. You also have to know your individual rights. If you're watching this video, for the most part, you are a private citizen. That means you're a non-elected official, means you don't occupy currently an office of public trust. And so remember, somebody shows up to your work and you don't want them there, and you ask them to leave, that's an unwanted contact. If you get 3 of those, it's called aggravated stalking. And circumstances of employment do not matter. It doesn't matter if you work at a county building, a state building, a hospital, whatever. If you are being targeted, you have every right to tell people you do not want them in your place of work and call the police and explain that to the local police department. Get that case number and keep that information handy. You do not give up any of your rights just because you work in the public sector or the private sector. It doesn't matter if the place you work on is public property, private property, or commercial property that is open to the public. You are an individual citizen, and well, yes, people do have the right, if you work for, say, the state of Michigan, to pull paperwork on you from the state of Michigan. That doesn't mean you are in any way compelled to give them your name or to give them the amount of your salary or anything else like that. That's on them to dig that stuff up. This is just part one. Part two is going to be a bit more grimmer. That's going to be what to do if these people turn violent. We're going to go over the mass shooter scenario.